It means nothing. If you have the knowledge of God, that idol, no matter how beautiful it's crafted, no matter how much gold is in it, and silver is in it, and what a piece of art it is, all it is an object. It has no power. It can do nothing, as David said in the Psalms. It has they have eyes, they see not, ears, they hear not, a mouth that speaks not. They that make them are like unto them. You become like what you worship. You worship the Lord, you become like the Lord. You worship an idol, you become like an idol. And that idol has no power of its own. The only power it has is what people give it. I've seen these Roman Catholic processions where they pick an idol up and carry it around in a procession. That's pretty bad when you've got a God that can't move by itself. This blind, deaf, and dumb, paraplegic, quadriplegic God that you have to carry around. Remember Dagon when it fell over in front of the Ark of the Covenant in the land of the Philistines? Down it went. Bang, face down. They had to go and pick their God up. It fell over. I fell and I can't get up. Huh? They put it back up in place and the Ark of the Covenant was there and it fell down again. Bang! And you know, the way it ended up is it began to lose parts. The hands were gone, the head was gone. So Dagon, I think they had to rename it Old Stumpy because the thing had busted to all the pieces and they still set it up. Isn't it amazing what the heathen will cling to? God does things and people just don't get it. They're so dissolved in their religion that they don't pay attention to what God is saying. Now, there is none other God but one. Verse 5 says, "For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many and lords many." Now what's he saying? These aren't gods, but people say they are. Notice he says, "For though there be that are called gods," people are calling them gods. Back in the old days, they'd look up in the sky over toward the south, and they'd find the ecliptic line, the celestial equator. All they'd have to do is find Orion, the hunter. You've all seen that constellation. Looks like he's carrying a big sword, and he's got his arm up in the 3 belt stars at an angle there. Alnilam, Alnitak, Mintaka. That is actually, if you connect the dots, that is the celestial equator. That's how you find it. And all the planets move along a certain line called the ecliptic line, which bisects the celestial equator twice a year at the equinoxes, autumn and vernal, spring. And so they look up and they would see these planets in motion, and there'd be one that looked kind of reddish brown, kind of a gold rust sort of color, and had a reddish tinge to it, and they named it Mars. The Greeks called it Ares, the god of war, blood red. And they made a god out of it, Mars. Now in reality, is Mars a god? No. It's a planet. It's a big, gigantic piece of rock with a lot of iron oxide on it, which is rust. It's a rusty old planet. And it moves along the ecliptic line, and it would move in patterns, and they made a religion out of this. They saw another one. It looked pretty good size, very bright sometimes. They called it Jupiter, or Zeus, as the Greeks called it. And so they look up and they say, there's another god. There's Zeus. There's Jupiter, or Zeus as they call him. Or there's Mars, or Ares. Look, there's Neptune. They call him the god of the sea because it looks so bluish in color. And they'd look at another one. There's Venus, the goddess of love. How come Venus was a goddess? Was it wearing a skirt? No, they made a religion out of this thing, but they look up into the heavens and they call these planets gods and goddesses. And they look all through the sky and see the patterns in the sky. The 7 daughters of Zeus, the Pleiades. Look above that and see the Hyades, the Taurus, the bull. And boy, they had a lot of bull in their religion. But anyway, and look at all these different constellations, and they had quite an imagination. They made up stories about them. They looked up and worshipped these things as gods, but all they were minerals and rocks out in space, moving around because God put them in orbits. That's what made Abraham so different when he was in the land of the Chaldees. While they were looking up and worshiping the sun, because they had figured out wherever there's sunlight, there's life. They weren't that dumb back then. If there were plants and they didn't get sunlight, they died. They put them in the sunlight, the photosynthesis caused them to flourish, and they felt like, okay, the sun gives life, so they worship the sun. They worship the moon. They said, since the sun is big and strong, it's masculine. And since the moon is a weaker light and is on a 28-day cycle, just like a woman's menstrual cycle, therefore the moon is female. The moon is nothing but a big rock. That's right. So they made gods and goddesses out of all of this. But Abraham, when he looked at it all, said, wait a minute now. Somebody had to make all this. And he began to worship the Creator, not the creation. And that's when God called him out of the land of the Chaldees. And said, come and I'll show you a land that I will give unto you. And he didn't know where he was going. Where am I going, Lord? Well, I'll let you know when you get there. Isn't that how God operates? He doesn't necessarily tell you where you're going or what you're going to be doing, but he'll let you know when you get there. So keep moving forward until you get there. And when you get there, you'll know it. The Lord does lead us by His Spirit. Now, so here it says, for though there be that are called gods, the people, the heathen, the pagans, the witches, and all these, call them gods. Of course, we got, oh, by the way, I was going to tell you, let me interject this here real quickly. I appreciate you coming out tonight and choosing rather to come and hear the Word of God instead of Barack Obama. I mean, you could have stayed home and listened to Barack talk about how he's going to straighten out the nation. He's got it all figured out, He's going to cut the budget. He's going to cut the domestic spending. You take the whole pie, the whole circle of the budget. He said it's going to affect 13% of the budget. Where do you come up with that number 13? They do it all the time, don't they? Everything's 13. 13 men are going to straighten out the healthcare system. 13 vehicles are traveling around the country to promote the census. Everything 13, 13, 13, 13. And now we got the moon approaching full phase, so he gives his speech. He was waiting for a full moon, see? Which actually comes to complete fullness on Friday night, but it's almost full now. So he picked tonight to give his State of the Union address and come up with all these solutions. He's going to create all these jobs, But he who blew all this money, big stimulus package, nearly $1 trillion he throws out there, now he says he's going to cut. You know what that's like? That would be like if I had a credit line on my credit card and ran up $1 million on my personal credit card. Me. $1 million, okay? But I'm going to give up Starbucks coffee every day. That's going to fix it. Well, I don't even drink the stuff, but I'm just using that as an example. You see, you don't fix it that way. He's not going to fix it. He did say, I would rather be a good one-term president.